That sentence, that moment, it still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. Because that was the first time I felt my privacy crack. Not break entirely, not yet, but crack, like a hairline fracture in a piece of glass that eventually shatters under its own pressure. I remember the exact setting, too. It was late afternoon, the kind of dull, cloudy day where the sky hangs heavy and low. I had just returned home from work. My shoes dusty, my shoulders aching, my heart tired in the quiet way that comes from a long day rather than heartbreak. My landlord, Mr. Haniff, stood outside the building, fumbling with a set of keys. He wasn't a friendly man, but he wasn't unfriendly either. He spoke softly, almost shyly, and he carried himself with the kind of politeness that made you drop your guard a little. But that day, something in his tone had changed. "You wore a nice blue sweater today," he said casually, almost as if commenting on the weather. I froze. Because I had worn a blue sweater. At home. After work. Alone. Inside my room with the door closed. I forced a smile, pretending I didn't hear him correctly. "What did you say?" He shook his head, dismissing it quickly. "Oh, nothing. I must have seen it earlier when you left for work." But he didn't see me this morning. He wasn't outside when I left. He couldn't have known. I remember going upstairs, my breath slow and measured, telling myself I was overthinking things. That maybe I accidentally bumped into him that morning and didn't notice. But deep down something cold curled inside me. I didn't know it then, but that was only the first thread of the whole nightmare I was about to discover. Back then, my life was simple, quiet, predictable, even a little lonely if I'm being honest. I had moved into that building 6 months earlier after switching jobs. It was a modest apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom. A small kitchen that smelled faintly of old paint and toasted bread. My salary wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. I liked routines. In the mornings, I made myself tea, chai with extra cardamom, the way my mother taught me. I'd push open the wooden window to let in the soft sunlight while I got dressed. Then I'd head out to work, waving a polite greeting to whoever happened to be passing by. Most evenings were quiet. I cooked simple meals, dal, rice, chicken curry when I had the energy. I'd take a shower, change into soft clothes, and unwind with a book or my favorite YouTube stories. Maybe that's why I loved Auntie May's channel so much. The stories felt real, and the voices felt like home. I never imagined my own life would one day feel like one of those stories. Heavy, tangled, painful. As for my landlord, Mr. Haniff, he was one of those men who seemed older than his age. Thin, soft-spoken. Always wearing the same gray sweater no matter the weather. He lived on the ground floor, and I lived on the third. We rarely spoke, except for rent day or when he had to fix something, which admittedly he did promptly. Now that I look back, he always paid attention a bit too closely. Like the time he asked why I came home late 3 nights in a row. Or when he mentioned how often I ordered takeout. At the time, I thought he was just nosy in that old-fashioned, small landlord way. I never imagined he knew more because he watched more. Still, nothing about my life seemed dramatic or dangerous. It was just ordinary. Peaceful in the way that makes you think the world is safe. And maybe that's what made everything that happened next so violating. Betrayal always hits harder when it happens in a place where you truly believed you were protected. I kept my little apartment neat. My bed was always made, the blanket folded at the end. I lit a candle occasionally on weekends, lavender or rose, filling the room with a gentle fragrance. Sometimes I'd sit cross-legged on the floor, sorting laundry or journaling. Those small habits, those tiny private moments, they were mine. My sanctuary. My safe space. Or so I thought. On Sundays I called my mother. She'd asked about my apartment, whether it felt like home. I always said yes. I meant it too. The silence, the warmth, the familiarity. They wrapped around me like a blanket. If only I knew that silence wasn't truly silence. That warmth wasn't my own. And that familiarity came from someone watching every corner of my life. But at that time, my biggest worry was whether my shower heater would break again, or if I could finish reading the novel I kept putting off. I couldn't have imagined that someone, somewhere inside the walls of the same building, was studying my habits. The way I tied my hair after a shower, the hours I slept, the clothes I changed into after work. Looking back, there were signs. Little things. Moments primers dismissa. But that day, the blue sweater comment, it lingered. Still, I didn't want to create a story in my head. I told myself he probably saw me accidentally, or was confusing me with someone else. People make odd comments sometimes, right? So I tried to push the discomfort away. I made my dinner that night, rice and chicken curry. I watched a movie. I brushed my hair sitting on the edge of my bed. The window rattled slightly from the evening breeze. Everything felt normal, calm, almost peaceful. But as I lay in bed, listening to the faint ticking of the wall clock, that comment repeated in my mind like a whispered warning. How did he know? That question would lead me down a path I never wanted to walk. A path that would expose truth, fear, betrayal, and violation in ways I wasn't prepared for. And it all began with that one blue sweater. When the police left that night, after taking statements, collecting the tiny camera hidden in the fake smoke detector, and escorting Mr. Haniff away, I sat alone in my living room. My hands were still shaking. My throat ached from holding back tears. The room felt strangely unfamiliar, like it belonged to someone else. But the silence, for the first time in months, it felt real. I remember wrapping a shawl around myself and sitting on the floor, leaning against the couch. The apartment was dim, lit only by a single lamp I hadn't realized I left on. The shadows on the wall felt softer now, less threatening. Yet somewhere deep inside, the fear still pulsed. Not of danger, but of violation. I kept thinking, how long had he been watching me? How many moments of mine weren't really mine? There's a specific kind of heartbreak that comes when someone steals not just your safety, but your solitude. It's a pain that settles quietly into the bones. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, police follow-ups, and building inspections. The other tenants learned about what happened. Some out of concern, some out of curiosity. A few looked at me with sympathetic eyes. A few avoided eye contact entirely, as if saying, I don't want to imagine what you went through. I didn't blame them. Half the time, I didn't want to imagine it either. I moved out within 2 weeks. My mother insisted I come home for a while, and I finally agreed. When I walked into my childhood room, still painted the soft green the first chose when I was 14, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in months. The windows didn't feel threatening. The walls didn't feel like they had eyes. My mother cooked for me. My father brought home my favorite pastries. My sister came over just to sit beside me while we watched TV. Healing, I learned, doesn't always come with grand gestures. Sometimes it comes in ordinary moments. A cup of chai someone else makes for you, a warm blanket placed on your shoulders, the gentle sound of footsteps familiar and safe. I spent nights journaling, writing everything, my confusion, my fear, my anger. I wrote until my hand cramped and the ink smudged. I wrote until the pages stopped feeling heavy. And somewhere along the way, I realized something. I hadn't lost myself. I had been shaken, violated, deeply hurt, but not broken. One afternoon, maybe a month after moving home, a police officer called. The case was moving forward. The evidence was strong. He would face consequences. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply exhaled. Because justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet release in the chest. A few weeks later, the officer informed me that several other cameras had been found in vacant units and one storage room. There were other victims, though some chose not to come forward publicly. I felt an ache of sympathy, mixed with a subtle strength. I wasn't alone. And I had spoken up. That mattered more than I realized. When I finally found a new apartment, one owned by a family friend, with sunlight streaming through the windows and walls painted cream, I moved in slowly, carefully. I checked every corner, every socket, every vent. Healing isn't linear. Some days I felt brave. Some days I felt timid. But each morning, as I opened the curtains to let the light in, I whispered to myself, this is my home, my space, my life. And each day, I believed it a little more. Over time, my routines came back. My cooking, my reading, my quiet evenings. But now, I paid attention to the world differently. Not from fear, but from understanding, awareness, strength. Some months later, I received the final update. The court found him guilty. He would not return to that building. he would not be free for a long time. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and allowed myself to feel the finality of it. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. Because closure doesn't always feel like victory. Sometimes it feels like finally being able to sleep with both eyes closed. If you've listened this far, thank you. This wasn't an easy story to tell, but I wanted to share it because sometimes the danger we fear the least comes from the place we trust the most. Our homes are supposed to be sanctuaries, places where we exhale, unwind, and exist without watching ourselves. When that safety is taken, it changes you. But I learned something important. Even when someone invades your space, your privacy, your peace, they cannot steal your strength unless you let them. And I didn't. I rebuilt. Slowly, quietly but surely. Now I want to ask you, if you were in my place, realizing your landlord had been watching your private life, what would you have done? Would you confront him? Walk away? Call the police? Or something else entirely? Tell me in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories like mine, stories of resilience, truth, healing, make sure you subscribe and support the channel. Your voice matters here. Your story matters. And you are not alone.